Okay. Hey, Jim. Can you hear me? Hey, C. Dean. Okay, as I said, before I go any further, can you guys hear me? Okay, good. There's a delay. There's a delay here, so yeah. Yeah, we're gonna be doing 21st century mountain man gear. So there's 7 people here, but I only see. Oh, and Pat. Hey, Pat. Okay, but as I said, we're going to be doing 21st century mountain man gear. This is one I actually did for an article a while back. Never got published, so I decided I'm just going to do a talk out of it. So why 21st century mountain man gear? I asked. Well, the mountain man's always kind of fascinated me, and it's kind of interesting to see the parallels of what they used back then to what a lot of us use now, especially in the bushcrafting community. There we go. Um, there's a lot of parallels there. I mean, a lot of people still use the stuff that the mountain men use, like your flint and steel. We're going to talk about char material, what people char, what they charred then, what we char now. Um, the knives haven't really changed one way or the other. Well, they have changed, but they haven't changed. They're probably the closest thing that to what they used then to what we use now. Hey, Kenneth. So there, I mean, there's a lot of parallels, but like the flint and steel, and we're going to break them down. But let's say the flint and steel would be replaced now with the ferrocerium rod. The flint and steel was back then. In fact, that's what I start with because when you think of the mountain man, people think of the flint and steel aspect of making fire. Jeremiah Johnson comes to mind. Him underneath the pine tree, and he's sitting there, and he finally gets the fire going, and a big pile melts a pile of snow and comes down on top of it. You have there's that aspect, but now you have the ferrocerium rod. Ferrocerium rod kind of took over the flint and steel left off. Ferrocerium rod is a lot easier to use than flint and steel, but in the same aspect, it works almost the same. What flint and steel was is a piece of high carbon steel and a piece of flint, or any hard rock. I can't remember the Rockwell number, but quartz would work, obsidian would work, chert would work. Flint was the generic term, though. But all those rocks would work with high carbon steel. And what would you do is when you smack them together, it'd knock a spark off, and they try to put that spark in there in a piece of char material, and that would create an ember. And with that ember, they take that ember, put it in a bird's nest, and that's how they would get their fire going by adding oxygen to that bird's nest, adding heat to it, uh, increasing the combustion of the bird's nest till it finally caught on flame. With the ferrocerium rod now, especially with some of the things that are on the market, and some of the things that you could actually find in the woods that they found works with ferrocerium very well, is you make a bird's nest, you get your little tinder bundle. A lot of times you either put it in the fire or in the bird's nest, and you take a striker and you take a striker or the spine of your knife. If you have a nice 90-degree spine to your knife, that works really nice. And you strike the ferrocerium rod, and it sends the ferrocerium off, at about 5,000 degrees. It hits that and it combusts. So that's where ferrocerium rod is actually a little more superior than flint and steel. Is you get the flame right away. Getting my notes here. So there's good. Oh, I would say there's good and bad, but you're probably start to see the different correlations here. Um, Another thing that kind of went that really got modernized was rope. They would use like a jute rope or oh, what's the other one? Not twine, but mostly it was jute rope. Jute rope was the big one because jute rope was multi-purpose. They could take that jute rope, fray it, and use it as a tinder. It was a very strong rope and readily available. Today, now you can't. You actually can buy it with with a tinder inside. It's called paratinder, but the thing now is paracord. Hey, Corsair, and the paracord is kind of like the jute, what the jute was then. Not quite as multifunctional, but it can be used for a multitude of things. Like a 550 paracord, in most cases, can hold stuff up. The good stuff can hold stuff up to 550 pounds. Oh, you are correct, Kenneth. We're going to get into that. Um, we will get it. We will get into that. That's coming up here shortly. Um, the thing with the paracord is though is how paracord's versatile is when you cut it. You got that sleeve, and you got 6 or 7 strands inside of it. So your one piece of cordage is actually like 6 or 7 pieces of cordage, and it has a multitude of uses, especially once you start breaking it down. Because that cordage on the inside is almost fine. Is pretty much fine enough to fish with. You can do clothing repairs. You can sew yourself up if you had to. Uh, there are a multitude of things that you can use paracord for once you break it down. If you don't break it down, there's a multitude of things you can use it for. Putting up a tent, ridge line, you name it. Thank you, Kenneth. So there are a ton of things that paracord can be used for. It's another one of the multi use items. Thank you, Pat. We still use a char material as well. Back then, what they would do is they would char canvas and they would char punkwood. The reason that they would char canvas is a lot of times like tinning, like a tent or your oilcloth, but it's wore out to the point that you can't repair it anymore. Instead of throwing that resource away, they found that if they charred it, hey moms, that if they charred it, basically put it in a container, put it in the fire, heat it to it to a quote unquote burning temperature, but not do not let the oxygen get to it. It would char and it would rarely take a spark like that. Well, we still char stuff today, but instead of charring canvas, most people I know now, hey dad, most people char denim. Yeah, I know it kind of sounds funny, but think of all those worn out pairs of blue jeans you got that you can't wear anymore. You got a full set of pants of char material that you could cut up, put in an Altoids tin, which we're going to get to as well. Throw it in the fire with a little hole, just one little hole in the top, so all the gases escape, no oxygen comes in, and you got char material, man. Um, a magnifying lens or a sun lens. A lot of people still use your regular magnifying lens. You know, we'll deal about big around. Um, and then some people use a Fresnel lens. A Fresnel lens, depending on the size, and where are they here? I had a couple running around here someplace. Not that I put one of these in my pack, but Fresnel lens right here. You can start a fire with that thing. And you can start a fire pretty quick with one of these too, especially out in the open. These things are strong. But the Fresnel, in some cases, the Fresnel lens is taken over for the magnifying lens. And but Fresnel lenses aren't exactly the easiest thing to get. Magnifying lens, you could go in just about any Walmart, Rite Aid, dollar store, what have you, and boom, you got yourself a magnifying lens. You just have to make sure it's at least over 5 power, 10 power preferably. um, a, uh, they also would have a tarp or a tent of some sort. Usually a tent if they had some kind of conveyance. Tarp, even back then, tarp was I want to say a conveyance item, but it wasn't the easiest thing to carry. But it was canvas was more of an oilcloth than a canvas. Canvas was real heavy. Oilcloth was a little bit lighter, and at least like maybe an 8x8 or 9x9. Which now, in some cases, especially if you talk to a lot of these light hikers that like the hammock camp, which is cool. I have no problem with that. But with those, they went with a nylon, one of them lightweight nylon tarps, which, if made right, is just as tough as one of the nylon tarps. Um, there's a couple I'm looking at. I'm actually looking at getting a 9x9 tarp here in the near future. Oh, yeah, that's one thing Mom said. I did not say that with the Fresnel lens. I'm going to back up here for a second. Mom says don't watch with the ignition source when you're using the Fresnel lens because they can burn your retinas. The magnifying glass can be a little bit tough on, but the Fresnel lens is like what you're trying to set something on fire with the Fresnel lens. It is literally like watching somebody weld, and you never should watch somebody weld with the naked eye because you can blind yourself that fast. But getting back to the tarps here, the canvas tarp or the oilcloth tarp was kind of like the mainstay back then. There are many different tarp configurations that you can set up with either one or two tarps. You can do the same thing with the nylon tarps now too, but the nylon tarps are a fraction of the weight and when packed are a fraction of the size of the other two. So things have come a long way there, but they're still used the same. And they had like a haversack or a possibles bag, which just about anything now in a possible bag is what they carried a lot of their stuff in. Another way they would carry their stuff, especially with the tarp, put everything in their bedroll and roll the bedroll up around it, tie off the ends of it, and put that on. Now, in today's day and age, we don't really do that. We go out, we buy ourselves a low back, or I've used it's a repop, but I've used a Vietnam era messenger bag. I've used a large fanny pack. I've used a small backpack, and right now I'm using a sling pack. It's like the evolution, and that sling pack fits everything that I want to carry, especially like on a day hike. And the way it goes on, because it goes on over this shoulder, but comes down over this hip over here. So it kind of goes diagonally across my back, and I can tighten that thing with a lock belt on it. And when you cinch everything down, it doesn't move. Instead of just using the shoulder straps, the way it goes across you, it kind of does both at one time. So it's kind of slick. But everything I carry everything that I would use on a day hike. I call it my fast scout pack. It's a little concept that I came up with. It usually still has the 10 seeds in it, but okay, am I back? Hello. Hmm. Okay, good. Okay, I got this reconnection notice. So I was to make sure I was back before I did that. And you're right, Mums. Dave can't. I'm a Dave Canterbury fanboy. I'll admit it. But pretty much at this in this day and age, anything that you use to carry your stuff is good, as long as you're comfortable with it. This is one of those with the way all this stuff is you have to find what works for you. There is no right, there is no wrong. Just can it get the job done? Okay, now we're getting into what Kenneth was talking about, the knives. Uh, Back then, before Kephart, before Nesmith, before all these guys, they would use a butcher style knife with a jackknife or a smaller knife as a backup that was made of high carbon steel. Now, something that Kenneth said was absolutely correct because there's a lot more quality control. Oh, see, I'm about the same way, Kenneth. Um, all the knives that are made back then, though, were high carbon steel, so they all had 90-degree spine, which a good knife today will also have a 90-degree spine because that knife is a multifunctional tool. Not only can you use the blade, you should be able to use the spine on that knife as well. You use the blade for your cutting task, and yeah, you use the blade for the cutting task. You can use the spine. Spine is good for scraping, whether you're scraping off bark or you're scraping fat wood shavings into a little pile. Um, that and if your knife is high carbon steel, like they did back then, if you lose your flint striker, I wouldn't recommend doing this. You can do it's not going to hurt the knife, but it's just tear and tear. You can take a high carbon knife and hit the flint on your high carbon knife. Hey, Mary Beth, and you can hit the flint on your high carbon knife, create sparks on the char material or on something that will take a spark and create fire. But the knives of today are, as I said, far superior. Um, and you're going to get two different variations of knives even today. Most knives, most knives that you get, I wouldn't say almost all, but most knives that you're going to get today are going to be made from material removal, which means they take a bar, they temper the bar, they shape the blade, do everything, they heat treat it. I wouldn't say they temper it. I'm sorry, they anneal it. They do all the work to it. They shape the blade. They put the bevel to it. Before the final sharpening, though, they will temper it. They'll harden it, and then they'll temper it before they put the final sharpening to it. But they have this all down to a science now, and it's a different for each different type of steel that they use, whether it's stainless or whether it's high carbon, now has its own process that you have to go through. 1095 is still about the same now as it was back then. Whereas if you take like stainless steel, now you have to get into foils that you have to wrap the blade in. So when you heat treat it, when you anneal it, and when you temper it, the oxygen doesn't get to it. So there's like a whole big. You could probably do a live stream on that alone of different ways that you have to process steel to anneal it, to temper it. I mean, to anneal it, to harden it, and to temper it for knife making. Um, Another thing that they would carry cotton cloth, and that cotton cloth had a myriad of uses. Hey, what's up, High Desert? Long time no see, bud. And that cotton bandana, either being bright or being dark, had, as I said, had a ton of uses. They would use it as a bandage. They would use it to clean up. They would use it just to wipe their brow or wipe their hands. A bright colored one, they would use as a waypoint. What I mean by waypoint is they would put this thing, hang it up in a tree, or hang it off a limb, or put it someplace that they could venture out so far. They would only go out as far as they could see that, especially if they had it hanging out of a tree in a circle to scout an area. Sometimes it'd be a small circle. Sometimes they'd be able to see this thing from about 300-400 yards away. But it was a visual point to go back to, so they wouldn't get lost. Was it a stainless steel or was it a high carbon, mums? Like, was it like a stainless steel Mora companion? Yeah, but the bandana, well, they would also wear that bandana too. In many cases, high carbon. Okay. When I'm done with the talk here, I may have something for you. Okay, they also would carry a compass. Um, hey, zombie, what's up? They would also carry a compass. It was a basic compass, almost not that much more than a button compass back then. It was round, and the needle would go around and point the magnetic north. Now we have like a lensatic compass or a good base plate compass with a mirror and a GPS, depending on how you want to go. Okay, see you later, zombie. um, we'll start with the compasses now. Many of the compasses, especially like your base plate compass that will pop open with the mirror, these things have a ton of uses, especially if you have a good one. Thank you. Um, One of the first things, of course, is to keep your direction. Many of these now have, you could actually dial in your magnetic declination, not just figure it out on the map. You could dial it in, so you could set everything to zero. And with it being dialed in, now you can set everything back to zero and just use the compass as is. Hey, what's up, FLP? But the other thing these things will have is a mirror. The mirrors, when you cock that mirror back, when you're holding it up, because a lot of them will have a sight window about that big in them. You're going to look through that sight window, especially when you're shooting the bearing, and find something you're going to walk to. And it'll have like a little V notch in it and everything. But when you cock that back, it's going to do one of two things. You're going to find your reverse azimuth or your reverse bearing, number one. The other thing you can use that mirror for is basically look at your face or look at something that you can't really see. You can't move your head around to see. It could also be used as a signaling mirror. So there's many different uses for the mirror. And many of the compasses now, your base plate compasses, also have a little magnifying glass, which is powerful enough to start a fire. Um, you could use it to look for splinters on yourself. If you have if you can feel, it's like those little splinters that you can feel, but you can't see. Well, you got yourself a magnifying glass to find it. Um, they would also use a tobacco tin. Now, what they would use a tobacco tin for when they originally buy it was for, well, tobacco. After they emptied the tobacco, like the one that X got me, he got me a Hudson Bay, which I have it packed away in a box right now. But it has like a little magnifying glass on the top. It has charred material and jute twine and a flint and steel in it. That's where they would keep their fire kit at. And they would have the char material in there. And most people, if you see them now, they have, because some people still use them, and they'll put like a ferro rod and a lighter in there too. And that's what they call their fire kit. And that's what, if that works, that's cool. But if you look inside of it, everything's all nice and neat, and everything's in its own little case and everything. What these guys would do is they would take all their char material, throw it in the thing, let it flop around wherever, and they would have their charred canvas, charred cloth, charred punk wood, it whatever they charred went in there. And when they would go to um, strike a flint and steel to get an ember, instead of pulling some out and putting it off to the side, they would just strike it right into that tin, and whatever ember they grab that ember, throw, throw it in their tinder bundle, and away they go. But the equivalent to that now is you got, some of you may laugh, now would be the Altoids tin. The Altoids tin has taken on a life of its own in the outdoors. Um, People use it to char material. They use it to make little kits, little fishing kits. You name a kit, they have an Altoids. They have an Altoids kit for it. Anything, first aid, char material, um, fishing, cutting, anything. Now it's going to come to the fun part here. Um, the firearms that they would use back then, up until, hey, it's a tin that works, right? That's all that matters. Um, the thing, and this is kind of like a taboo thing on YouTube, but I don't care. Back then, during the Mountain Man days, until the rolling block came around, was black powder. Uh, Many different calibers, and the one thing, when they use black powder, many of them would use the same caliber rifle as they would a pistol. That way, they only had to make or cast one size of ammunition, and one size kind of fits all. Like if you had and my buddy of mine has one, he has a black powder 50 cal pistol and a 50 cal rifle. They both take the same ball. So that's one thing. And what they did is what many people do now. They standardized it. They had a standardized caliber that they used. That's all they used, unless they found something that they could trade and do better. But when they traded, they tried to trade for both. So we're going to get into the modern firearms. Um, this is my thought, and surprisingly, this is one thing I actually disagreed with Dave Canterbury on for a while. I know the Dave fanboy thing, but then I got to thinking about it, and he was right. Um, Barring anything, I'm not talking about Civil War. I'm not talking about any of this. I'm just talking about procuring food. That's where I'm going to go with this, because everybody has their own thoughts. This is what my thoughts are. And I'm going to bring up 3 different guns. The first thing I'm going to bring up is a 12 gauge. Um, any 12 gauge chambered in at least 3-inch. And the reason I say that is you cannot go anywhere here in Pennsylvania without tripping over stuff. Every farmhouse, hen house, and outhouse has at least one box of 12 gauge ammo in it, if not more. The second one is a 22 long rifle. Same deal. You can't go anywhere around here and not run into it. A lot of it. And the third one, and it's not really a stretch, but the third one, with the advent of the AR, would be 223 5.56. Um, any rifle that's chambered in that, like I know one place right now, they're not ARs, they're bolt actions, but I know one place right now you could probably buy one of at least 20 bolt action 223s because that's becoming a very popular ammo along with the 5.56 right now. Um, silverware and plates. Well, back then, they're mostly made of tin. You had plates, you had your silverware, your pots, your pans, and everything was. This is a lot of times they would usually just carry maybe a fork and a spoon. A lot of times they would they would carve what they call a trencher in a plate once they got to base camp. In some cases, until the tin came along. When tin came along, they'd have like a tin plate and maybe a tin pot, unless they had some kind of conveyance, and that's when the cast iron came out, which is extremely heavy. Which now we have the mess kit. But your military mess kit or the mess kits, any of them, stainless steel. I have a nice stainless steel one now that probably weighs half as much as my aluminum military grade mess kit. I still use the aluminum one, but that stainless steel one is just as nice, works just as good, and is much more compact. Instead of having all these pots and pans, I have something that's about that big around, that thick, has its own thing, and I can just throw it right in the pack and away I go. Doesn't take up that much room. Okay. Um, on we go here. Uh, they would also use a telescope. Some of them, especially the scouts, would use a telescope. They were fairly common back in the day. You didn't really have to be rich, but they weren't the greatest. Let's put it that way. They could only magnify so far, and in order to get more magnification, you had to get longer and longer and longer, so they could work with that focal point. Now we have binoculars. Like I have 4 pairs of binoculars over there in different sizes. One is literally a pair of, I think, 1920s or 1930s brass opera glasses, but they work just as good. They work better than the size binoculars I have. They're very comparable to them. Also have a set over there. I think I can't remember what the power is on them now, but they're Bushnells, and that those things from 2 miles away will pull stuff almost into your lap if you have a clear line of sight at it. So, in that respect, optics have come a very long way. And while I'm talking about optics, we're going to take a step back to rifles. Some of them did use scopes too, but the scopes back then were a tube that was literally mounted. There was no lenses in it. Everybody thinks that hey, P2E. Everybody thinks that there wasn't. The tube was as long as what the barrel was, and it had either one hair or did have like a crosshair in it that they could see, and it worked just like a scope. And you had to adjust for windage and everything else, but it had no magnification. It was basically nothing more than a tube. Um, many of them would also carry a quill and ink and paper. Oh, there you go. I have one of those. I love it. Foldable sterno stove. That's newer equipment. That's more camping equipment. That those foldable stoves and sterno stoves and stuff, those things came around, I'm thinking about 1940s, 1950s. They came out as camping gear and eventually went into like banquet gear, if you will, because they use little sterno heaters. But what she's talking about, I have one. I picked one up brand new. I think I picked it up brand new for like $5 with 2 cans of sterno. Uh, Great little piece. And the thing with those sterno stoves is you can use them with biofuel as well. Like my little Firebox Nano. You can. There's one of those flaps. I think you could open up and you could actually feed sticks into it. So you could use it with the biofuel as well. But back to what I was saying, many of them would carry a quill and ink and a paper. They didn't really have pens until probably late 1800s, early 1900s. Even then, a lot of them are still using the quill and the ink, or a fountain pen if they were lucky. There you go, moms. And many people today, they want to at least a notebook or a pen and a pencil. Uh, just like then, many people like to journal their time out in the wilderness, their time out on the trail. And what they would do is once they write this stuff down, they'd write down all kinds of experiences, how they're feeling, what they learned, what worked, what didn't work, and that gives them something to go back to if they have a question about something or anything. What was the weather like? What was this section of trail like? If somebody asks them a question, they can kind of go back through their notes and like, okay, it was like this. This is something you're going to have to watch out for, what have you. Journaling was a big thing then, especially with the fur trappers. The fur trappers journaled everything, especially when it came down to their pelts. When it came down to their pelts, they wanted to know how much they got for them. Many of them wanted to know how much they sold for and what their profit was off of it. I mean, people think these trappers weren't the smartest people. They were extremely brilliant and they were like one of the first accountants walking around in the United States before there was a United States. And the last thing is a lot of their small tools. Your scissors, a small saw. Many of them would actually carry a buck saw, like a 3-piece buck saw. As you see, you put together with the wood, and it has the lanyard, and you tighten it up against the blade. And once you got it tight, um, many times now we carry a multi-tool. Most of these multi-tools have pliers, a small saw, an awl, another small blade in it, another small knife blade, scissors, and just about anything else you could think of you could throw in there. Many multi-tools have a lot of that. Some people still carry the separate stuff. They just have like what they call a possibles bag with another small bag inside their kit, and they carry all the separate stuff. One word with the multi-tool though. Many people will lean on the multi-tool as their main. The multi-tool is really a backup if you really think about it. If you're carrying a 10Cs, the multi-tool should be a backup for a couple, 2 to 3 of them, whether it be your cutting device or anything along the lines. Because a multi-tool has many moving parts. If you lean on that as your main, it's going to be more likely to fail than it would like a regular solid belt knife, a full tang belt knife, even a jackknife. A good jackknife would be less prone to fail than a multi-tool, just because of the lack of moving parts. You have two or three moving parts as opposed to maybe 14 to 20 moving parts on your multi-tool. But with the Mountain Man gear, that's what I got tonight. Decided to start bringing my live stream back here so I can work on my channel a little bit. Try to get my viewer hours up. Exactly, P2, a good quality knife. And I want to try a couple different things here. I'm going to be doing mostly just outdoor stuff. I'm not going to get too much into the prepping here. I'm not going to get into the politics here. This is the outdoors thing here is like my break from everything. I can just kind of clear my mind, talk about stuff, hopefully teach somebody something, anything, and just have a good time. Just relax, enjoy my night, and run with it. Um, like some of the things I did this week, which I wanted to go beforehand, but this big box here in front of me, was acting up on me. I wasn't able to get my notes down on that. But like the overview of my week last week wasn't the greatest. Um, People were trying to get ready for Labor Day, so I was heavy all week. But I did get some video shot, and I got another video shot today before I got home. So I'm hoping to either drop that tonight or tomorrow. The video that I shot is going to be on the Garmin GPS. And the reason I decided to do a GPS, if you look at my playlist, I have a GPS series now. And the reason I decided to do that was I did one video on the GPS, kind of like a product review / using it. And probably as of right now, I have probably somewhere between 1,500 to 1,700 views on that. If you look at the views of all my other videos, that one video almost equals the views of all my at least half my videos combined, if not more. So I'm like, I think I got something here. So I'm going to do a series on that, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But what I shot today was I'm going through the quick start manual. It's one of those things where you have to learn to crawl before you can walk. And once we get through the quick start manual, and I've went probably about 2/3 of the way through it. There's not really much more left inside of it. But it's one of those things you have to learn how to crawl before you can walk, and you have to learn how to walk before you can run. So I'm starting from bare basics, and we're going to keep working from bare basics into different things, how to mark stuff, how to follow a waypoint, onto using it to scout with, using it like I'm going to be doing some historic, and like I'm going to use the GPS to map them, and I'm going to show you how to take your coordinates off the GPS, put them into Google Earth, so you can actually build a map of where you were and how I'm going to label everything. Like, let's say I do a scout of like the North Country Trail, a section of North Country Trail, and I'm going through. I'm gonna mark points of interest. I'm gonna mark resources. I'm gonna mark campsites, and I'm gonna mark my start and my stop. So when I go to map it out, I have all this stuff, and each thing is going to have its own symbol. So I can look right down that trail and I'm like, okay, that was a point of interest. I have water there. I had a big pine stand here that had red pines. I can get fat wood here, and on down the line. So that's one thing I'm working on. The other thing, I don't know if you guys seen it. I did the first video on the Dirt Road Cruiser, which is my Jeep. I wouldn't say I installed, but I put the Molly panels. I got these Molly panels that you hang on the back of your seat, and I got those put in yesterday. Put those in is a very easy deal. It's really, I don't even know I did a video of it, but it made an interesting video. And The next video, I'm gonna be putting the MOLLE bags on there and organizing the Jeep some. I'm not worried about it, Kenneth. It's all good. So there's that. Like my Jeep's kind of like my little pet project here. I'm gonna be doing a dirt road drive here on the what day is it? Here, not this Friday coming up, but the next Friday I'm gonna be going up to the mountains, and on that Saturday we're gonna be doing a road drive. I think that's the 19th. I can't see my too dark here. I can't see my calendar from here, but I'm gonna be doing a dirt road drive, and it's gonna be. I have a couple people coming up. We're gonna do a 70-mile drive. That's at least I think about 60 miles of it's gonna be nothing but dirt road. Um, I'm thinking we're going to average somewhere between 10 to 15 miles an hour. Um, Probably about at the two-third part, because I couldn't figure out how to do half, but but the two-thirds of the way through that, we're going to be going into Driftwood, and there's a little restaurant in Driftwood, so I was going to stop there and have lunch before we finish up the drive, which is we're going to go down the road and cut up over the mountain that Camp's on. So there's that going on. I also have the 12th. It's not through here. It's another group that I know of, and they're having a meet and greet at Moraine on the 12th. So I'm gonna be going over to that too. So I'll fill you guys in on that. And if Leroy lets me, I may take some video there as well of what goes on, what went on. If he wants me to, if not, I understand that too. So I think that's going to be interesting because I did a couple meet and greets here. Mum Slayer Next was at my last one. X was actually at both of them. Mums was at the last one, and they were both pretty successful. This one with the COVID is not going to be quite as big, but I think we're going to have just as much fun at both of them. The one on the 12th and the one on that I'm doing on the following weekend. So I think that's going to be interesting. And getting back to the dirt road cruiser, what this is a pet project because next year I'm planning on doing another dirt road drive solo. For one of my vacations, what I want to do is I want to drive to the other side of Pennsylvania. Then I'm going to start driving dirt roads the whole way back home. So I'm basically like the day I punch out, Friday when I punch out, I'm going to take off from work, drive to the other side of the state. I'm probably going to spend 1 or 2 days at Ricketts Glen. I'm going to use Ricketts Glen as a starting point. And I'm not going to say it's all going to be dirt roads. There's going to be a lot of back roads, but I want to stay off as much as I can off the highways and just explore. That's where the dirt road cruiser thing comes in. I'm putting some stuff on there that's going to make my life a little bit easier. Um, we're going to be getting crossbars for it while I'm on vacation. My vacation's next week. So while I'm on vacation, we're going to get crossbars. And after we get the crossbars, I want to get a basket that's also going to work with an awning / tent deal I found. I don't want to give up the cargo space in the basket because I can get a basket and I can get a rooftop basket, but a rooftop tent. The problem with the rooftop tent is all that. The reason I put the basket up there is for more cargo space. When I put the tent on top of it, I just lost all my cargo space. This awning actually pulls out from the side of the basket, and the tent is a separate piece. And you slide the tent up over and you attach it to the awning, and the tent's actually on the ground because my dumb ass will probably fall out of a tent on my roof anyway. That's just how I am. So I'm doing a bunch of things for that. The reason I'm going with tent, I'm still kind of looking for a camper. Oh, Kenneth, I've been on a good many of them, especially around Marionville. Been on logging roads. I don't know if you know the Quiana Wilderness area at all. I took my Jeep across Hoover Road. If you know that area and you know Hoover Road, one of you, there we go. Buffering, yeah, it says I'm reconnected now, and we're about to the end of it here. So I have many things come up here. Anybody have any questions with what I covered tonight, or anything that I talked after the Mountain Man gear? Anything? Yeah, because as I said, I'm trying something new here. I wouldn't say it's something new, but I'm kind of going back to something old, but I'm trying to put a new twist on it. Not that I can, but I'm attempting to. And I'm thinking this may help my channel. Um, well, yeah, it might help my channel. Um, there's a couple things involved here, but I think this is like a nice change of pace. Let's put it that way. And this is actually went a little bit better than what I thought. I wasn't expect. I went over that, but I really okay. Kenneth does have a question here. Okay, do you prefer old school equipment or newer, like lightweight, lightweight tarps? I used to run a canvas tarp, but I need to save weight for radio gear, so I switched to a sil nylon. Um, Mine, I'm mostly new school with kind of like an old school twist to it. Um, with my hiking gear, my hiking bag before I put food in it weighed about 35 pounds, and I'm actually trying to parse that down again right now to get under 30. So more or less, it's more like the newer stuff. But even with the newer stuff, I still kind of use it with that old school twist to it. Like I'm thinking about getting rid of the one man tent, and I'm over the winter. I'm going to be getting a tarp and a hammock, and I'm going to be monkeying around with that. Even if I have to monkey around with it in the backyard, figure out how I want to set that up, because I think that's going to be an easier, faster way to go than to carry around. Even though the one man tent only weighed like 1.5 pounds, I'm thinking the tarp and the hammock alone is probably going to be under a pound, plus the sleeping. I'm probably going to be right back up to a pound and a half. But I'm going to have a full sleeping system and shelter system in place. And the hammock I'm actually looking at a hammock with a bug net on it. Call me a wimp, but I'll tell you what, once I get the hammock, I'll be over, moms. How's that sound? Yes, I am, Kenneth. That's another reason why I'm kind of doing this dirt road drive, and I'm kind of planning that trip for next year, that solo trip, because I've literally run out of dirt roads around here. Literally, there's like none left. I'm There's one place I might go on vacation that may have found some if they're not gated off. It's a place called Hillman State Park, which is just south of Raccoon State Park in Washington County. It's open to the public, but it's what they call an undeveloped park. It's state park land that the public has access to, but there's no facilities, no office, no nothing. Just just old roads and woods. That's it. Oh, and there's a little piece of private ground right in the middle of it, off to the kind of like the northeast section of it. That's a remote control airplane airport, if you will. There's like a landing strip and a takeoff strip up there. But that's all there is there, and I'm thinking that's going to be rather interesting. See, I was looking at either getting a DD or an Eno. And the tarp I was looking at was actually a 9x9, but it has 12 tie outs on it. It doesn't have the grommets. It actually has triple stitch loops that you can pull against. And I think the tarp is also by DD. There's a couple things I want to get, but the hammock and the tarp would be the first things for the sleeping system. I finally got a knife. I got one of the PFK or sorry PFT knives. Okay. Okay, I'll keep that in mind too, Kenneth. So, I mean, I have a couple options of where to go to get those too. I don't have to go to just Pathfinders or Eno or DD. Um, yeah, somebody like me, believe it or not, I have a membership over at REI, so I get 20% off. I'm part of their co-op. I'm like, I don't make anything. Oh, that's okay. Here, take a card. Okay, cool. Fine, thank you. And some people may scoff at REI. I found actually that REI has stuff for almost every price point that you can imagine. Yeah, see, that's what I heard too, Kenneth. See you later, Mary. And we're at about 59 and a half minutes, and I'm about done anyway. So I thank you all for coming. I love you all. After I shut this down, feel free to share it if you want. Oh, they are, Kenneth. I'm not going to lie about that. They are, but if I can get a deal, it is good stuff. I'll take the deal. But hey, you all have a good night. I'm glad you made it. Love you all. Good night, everybody.